Hello everyone, Andy here, and here's what you can look forward to in today's episode. In today's episode, in Team Season Preview 18 out of 32, I was joined by Dallas Cowboys fan Paul Redman from the Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover podcast as we preview the team's upcoming season. Paul talks about the addition of Brian Schottenheimer as the head coach.
I have been impressed with Brian Schottenheimer in terms of how he's managed himself in front of the media.
Paul also discusses the Micah Parsons situation.
There's no sense in dragging this out.
And Paul predicts the team's overall season record in our win-loss-tie segment. Hope you all enjoy. Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, and we are now well into our season previews for this off-season. We have done 3 of the 4 of the NFC East teams. We've done the Commanders, the Eagles, and the Giants. We're now doing our 4th out of the 4 NFC East teams, and this is today the Dallas Cowboys. Now with me, I've got a returning guest. With me today is Paul Redman from Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. Paul, how are you? How are things?
All good, Andy. Thanks very much for having us back on. Appreciate, love the show. So appreciate being back on it again. And it means if we're on, we're getting close to the start of the NFL season, which is always a great time.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, we are the time of recording 3 days away from the start of preseason, the Hall of Fame game between the Lions and the Chargers. One of the very rare games I watch in preseason, but yeah, as I said before, great to have you on. I've been a big fan of your work for years, and it's good to know that you also follow our work. So it's I've been on your show a number of times. You've been on this show a number of times. Looking forward to I think today maybe giving you a hat-trick ball, maybe you've had your quadruple ball, but I can't think whether it's your 3rd or 4th.
Yeah, 3 or 4, I think. Yeah. Which is good, and it's always great. Look, we keep coming back, so that's credit to you, Andy, because we keep wanting to come on as well. So it's only because you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you very much. And we were meant to have another member of the Good Teams Win Great Teams Cover podcast, but Byron is strapped with work, so he won't be sadly available. He is also on North American time difference. He's right now probably well into a shift at work. So it's not. But right now it's 9:20 at night for us, but for him it's probably 5 or 4, 5.
Yeah. He is, so he's Chicago, so that's central time, isn't it? So, so he's 6 behind. So yeah, he'll be like 3:20. So yeah, Byron shares the same affliction as me of being a Dallas Cowboys fan, which means we're both miserable on our show. But yeah, sadly he's busy with work. He missed one of our recordings earlier as well, which is a rarity for him. He usually always makes sure he can make it, but not today. So yeah, you just get my take on the Cowboys, which should be fun.
And for those listening who maybe aren't aware of Paul's podcast, I'm actually going to be appearing on it in a few weeks' time. I did appear on their Mastermind series over the summer, where we had. It's what it says on the tin if you ever watch MasterChef, Mastermind.
It's definitely not what MasterChef do. Definitely not with those two guys.
I was going to say who's John and who's Greg, but that'll be but yeah, I managed to be successful and make the final of the Mastermind series. So I'll be appearing on the final amongst a friend of the show, Murph, who also made the final. Looking forward to that, and hopefully I can bring home the bacon.
Yeah, it's going to be the final's tough. Like 4 great competitors, 4 worthy winners of the heats. Definitely yourself, Tom Kraft, big Chiefs fan, Murph, as you mentioned, from 5 Yard Rush, and Paul from the 4th and Gold podcast, who was really good as well. So yeah, I can't wait to get it all done and recorded, and we'll find out who is the mastermind for our quiz show. But yeah, I'm really excited having you on to take on the challenge. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher this time because I've got to write more questions. So I think it's going to be even harder.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a lot. And actually, we're quite a lot of friends of the show that made an appearance on those 4 heats. All 4 boys from the Third and Long podcast. We've had so far Shane and Ollie coming on. We're due to have, provided it all goes ahead tomorrow, in terms of recording tomorrow, both Phil and Ollie to complete the Third and Goal set. Shane Brennan appeared in the show. amongst many others. I mentioned Murph before. So yeah, do check them out if you haven't already. But let's head into the ins and outs of the Cowboys offseason. So in terms of free agency signings, this includes the likes of Miles Sanders, Javonte Williams, Paris Campbell, Robert Jones, Dante Fowler, Solomon Thomas. You re-signed the likes of Kevontae Turpin, Marquise Bell, Brian Anger, CJ Goodwin, and you traded for the likes of Joe Milton from the Patriots, George Pickens from the Steelers, Kenneth Murray from the Titans, and Kaya Elam from the Buffalo Bills. And in departures, saw the likes of Trey Lance, Cooper Kupp both leave the quarterback room, Rico Dowdle, Brandon Cooks, who returned to his old side in the Saints, as well as the likes of Zach Martin to retirement. Also, we saw DeMarcus Lawrence leave, Carlos Watkins, Chauncey Golston, Carl Lawson, Linval Joseph, Eric Kendricks. And then in the draft, you took in total 8 players, and the first 3 taken were Tyler Booker, Donovan, Eddie Raku, and also Siobhan Ravel. Other players include the likes of Jaden Blue, Sherma James, Ajani Cornelius, Jay Toyer, Phil Maffa, and Tommy Aking Basotti. So, Paul, overall for you, as a Cowboys fan, your take on the team's off-season as a whole?
Yeah, I think to start with, pretty disappointing in terms of the number of kind of key contributors that left first number. But yeah, we had a lot of holes that came from a lot of starters leaving. Kind of very reminiscent of what happened in 2024 as well. So a lot of kind of starting players leaving, and that kind of puts you behind the 8 ball already, because you're looking to kind of fill those needs to do so. But I think it's a mixed bag. Like you mentioned, like Shane Rob Jones already could have been kind of some depth on the O-line. For example, broke a bone in his neck yesterday or the day before, so he's done probably now for the next 3-4 months. So there's probably a need there as well. Solomon Thomas is an interesting one. D-line's a real area of need for the Cowboys. Can't stop the run, and you'll hear me say that a lot about the Cowboys probably 20 times over the course of the next 45 minutes. But you've got to be able to stop the run, and the Cowboys have been pretty poor at it the last couple of seasons. Thomas is an interesting one. It feels like he's come in as a real cheap veteran free agent. He appears to be in as good a shape as he's been. He's a veteran. I think he's due 30 before the end of the season, but somebody else needs to help Osa Odigizua in the middle of that defensive line. Could it be Solomon Thomas? Could we see Mazzie Smith take a step forward? Who knows? But they needed support there as well. And then revamping the running back room, I suppose, has kind of been the other big theme of the off season. So obviously Zeke went, Rico Dowdle went. I was so sad to see him go, because he ended up having such a strong second half of last season as the O-line improved in the second half of 2024. And I don't think it'd have taken too much money to keep Rico Dowdle around. I think he's gone to Carolina for something like $6 million. But as the Joneses way, they didn't want to pay it, and we're relying on Javonte Williams, hoping there's something left in his tank. Miles Sanders, who after having that great season with Philly was a disaster in Carolina, and a couple of kind of rookies. So yeah, there's been lots of change. I am a lot more optimistic. I'm very positive about the George Pickens trade, which is good. I think a great one too with CeeDee Lamb. I think we see Pickens have a really good year. Whether it means he sticks around or not, who knows? But yeah, very much looking forward to see George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb together and how they can complement each other. So happy there. And then we've got a couple of reclamation projects, that might be the right way to describe it. And Kaya Elam, who was a former first round pick who we've traded from the Buffalo Bills. We last saw him get picked on by the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. They just went at him time and time again. And then we've got Peyton Turner as well from the Saints. Again, he's another one, former first round pick. Is there anything left there, talent wise, to be able to kind of push on? So mixed bag, but I kind of feel they're in an okay position. I'm quite optimistic about kind of the roster, and maybe there's a bit more there than there appears to be on paper.
Yeah, I mean, I think the running back room, it has to be a big concern. I mean, I remember it seems like just yesterday you had that really good running back room, which had Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. And obviously then when the band got broken up and Ezekiel Elliott went, and Pollard had the starting role as RB1, didn't quite have the same impact. And I think in just a couple of years, it's gone from being a really good room to being a very questionable one. I mean, Javonte Williams, I think we all were hoping in Denver to have that breakout year, but it never quite happened there. And I think, Miles Sanders, again, one of the classic examples of players who do well on contract years and then they get the move. And they don't quite have the same drive or maybe the same desire to, get over the first down markers. So, Miles Sanders was a really disappointing one from how good a season he had in 2023. But I think the one other major incoming that we haven't talked about yet is not even to do with players, to do with coaching. This is our first talking point, which is going to be all about. This will be our first talking point, which will be all about new head coach Brian Schottenheimer, who is in his first role as a head coach in the NFL. Of course, he is got a good gene pool. He is the son of former NFL head coach Marty Schottenheimer, but he's yet to have a role in the NFL as a head coach. His most recent role was in the building. He was the offensive coordinator at the Cowboys for 2023 and 2024. As well as before that, being the coaching analyst at the Cowboys in 2022. He's also been an offensive coordinator for two or 3 years at the Seahawks, passing game coordinator in 2021, which sadly for the Jags, maybe Cowboys fans, was the infamous Urban Meyer season. He's been the offensive coordinator at the Jets, the Rams. He's been a quarterback coach at both the Redskins and the Chargers, as well as a offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at the University of Georgia. So a very lengthy career as a coach. He did, win a national championship in 1966. Now this looks like it might have been. It was under his dad. Yeah. So. Clear bias. I wonder why he was picked.
So there is that, and Brian Schottenheimer's interesting because obviously naturally I think there's a lot of people look at that in terms of look at his dad, but I don't think he's necessarily works around his dad too much, and his dad I don't think has necessarily influenced him through his career as much as people would think. We got to speak to RJ Ochoa of Blogging the Boys, and he sort of mentioned around. Schottenheimer cites more people like Pete Carroll as influences on his career and his style rather than his dad. So obviously he's been, in and around the NFL and football for, his entire life. I think my worry when they had Schottenheimer was it was the easy hire because he was there. He was an offensive coordinator that didn't call plays. Mike McCarthy called plays for the last couple of years. So, you don't see that too often. These guys who are coordinators don't even call the plays, then go and get the next job. It's such a rarity. But I have been impressed with Brian Schottenheimer in terms of how he's managed himself in front of the media. It's a tough gig, regardless of how experienced you are being the Dallas Cowboys head coach. There is a level of scrutiny and in media intensity that there are in few places in sport. Being the head coach of the Cowboys. And he spoke really well. He's preached. It's all about changing the culture. Culture is what he's preached. And I think so far, in terms of his actions and the majority of the moves that they've made, whether that's the characters they've drafted, that they selected in the draft, and some of the free agents, he's following through on that. It's real difficult for him, and I feel sorry for him, as I did with Mike McCarthy, when you've got kind of Jerry and Stephen Jones spouting the mouth off every 5 minutes around various different matters that are going on for the Dallas Cowboys. But I'm actually optimistic about Brian Schottenheimer. I think he could be a really, really good coach. And now seeing him being in control of this offense a little bit more than obviously when he took the back seat to Mike McCarthy, with the weapons that they've got, George Pickens we've talked about, CD Lamb's been an absolute monster. Jake Ferguson, obviously, hopefully having a bounce back year as well, and maybe something from that running room. We could see kind of a return to the Cowboys being a dominant offense. Defense is what worries me, but we've got Matt Eberflus and can Schottenheimer kind of lead Eberflus to what he wants from his defense as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Jake Ferguson. He actually signed a new deal, a 4-year deal yesterday. So you've got your guy for the future. But of course, you talk in the future, and you talked about the Joneses maybe publicly coming out and criticizing players, and they've come out recently and spoken about who is I think easily your best player, Micah Parsons.
Hey everyone, Andy here, just interrupting the show with a disclaimer that when we recorded the show, Micah Parsons has not yet handed in his trade request with the team. So for those of you who are watching or listening to the show that are wondering why haven't we mentioned Micah Parsons' trade request, this is why. Regardless, hope you all enjoy the episode.
Now, if I want to get the quotes up that's been said about him, there's been multiple quotes from Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones getting involved as well. Now, there was a training camp, public training camp, I should say. This was, I believe, yesterday, where basically the fans in, I don't know where they were training in California for some reason.
Yeah, it's Oxnard, California, where they go for training camp. Yeah,
which seems logistically a nightmare. But there was a chant going around at Owen and Jerry Jones. Basically, there's two words: "Pay Micah." Now, this obviously something that Jerry Jones has responded to, and he did. He tried to dismiss it by saying he thought the chants were louder last year for CeeDee Lamb. But he said, if I get the quote right, he said he's got to want to be paid. And then later on, in another quote as well, he's gone out and said, just because we sign him doesn't mean we're going to have him. He was hurt 6 games last year. So there's been a weird sort of dynamic between Micah Parsons and Jerry Jones. And I mentioned then that the signing of Jake Ferguson, that's going to only, I imagine, increase tension between them two. That, Jake Ferguson's a good tight end, but I think, you think about, I'm not going to say they're going to do what the Giants have done with paying Jones over Barkley, but you think about how much they regret that. And I just can't help thinking that should Micah Parsons not sign any deal and he gets traded away and Ferguson maybe doesn't perform as well as maybe he has, that's going to be on his head forever as well. So, yeah, I think it would be, personally, I don't know what you think, Paul, but I think it'd be a massive mistake to let Micah Parsons walk because, if you want to be successful at any point in your career, as a team, you want your best players there. I mean, the Rams had for years Aaron Donald, where they weren't winning games. He's a small part of that drought of making the playoffs. Then he stayed there despite all the chaos around him at the Rams. Then he goes on and makes the Super Bowl and then wins the Super Bowl 3 or 4 years later. Micah Parsons simply cannot be allowed to walk.
Yeah, no, anyway, I think look, we've done this dance, or Jerry Jones has done this dance many times before. You go back as far as '93 with Emmitt Smith before they got a contract sorted out, and then kind of, Smith was signed early in the season, and then the Cowboys went on to win the Super Bowl. Sadly, that strategy hasn't paid off in the same way for Jerry Jones in years since. We've done this dance twice with Dak Prescott in terms of contracts, and last year where Dak was signed on the day of the first Sunday of the NFL season when Dak signed his contract. Did the same with CeeDee Lamb. It was late August, early September before CeeDee Lamb signed. And it'll be late August, early September when Micah Parsons signs the contract and becomes the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL, because that's going to be what happens. And there's no real, it's an asinine way to approach things, I think. There's no sense in dragging this out, because we've seen it, and I tried having a look before. I lost count of how many times just this offseason we've seen somebody sign a new contract and they've become the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. I think it might have started with Chase, maybe it's been Myles Garrett, it's been TJ Watt, it was somebody else. It might be Trey Hendrickson again. If he beats Micah to a contract, all it's doing is costing you money, and that's money that you could be investing in other areas of this roster that still need it. We saw the same with Dak Prescott last year. I think the comparison was the Lions got Goff done really early last off season. I think they got him in at $53 million a year. And then there was that run, I think Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, and it all just kept edging further up. And that then signed for $60 a year. We could have got him at 53, and that's $7 million. Might have got you Derrick Henry that you said you didn't have the money for. These are the costs of doing this, of dragging it out, of doing this shameless public negotiation that they try and do. They had the Stark admission the other day as well that they haven't even actually offered Micah a contract yet. Parsons, they've not even given him a starting offer. So they're nowhere near in the negotiation. It's just a brain dead way of doing business. And ultimately, it's going to, Parsons is going to earn, and it's TJ Watt now, isn't it? His was the last deal. So whatever TJ Watt's on, Micah's going to get another $1 million more probably to make him the highest non-paid quarterback in the NFL. And again, that's more money out of the cap that the Cowboys can't use to sign free agents that can help them elsewhere. It's just a crazy way of doing things.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? You talk about the running back issues that you have. That would have been solved with Derrick Henry. That would have been solved in an instant. And you think about last season, he may have been a difference. He may have easily won you 3 or 4 games. I think with the kind of player he is and the kind of season he had last year. Albeit, it's a lot easier to get stats when you aren't the bell cow like he maybe was Tennessee towards the end, or Barkley was at New York, or McCaffrey at Carolina. So I think he may not have had the success because he would have been used a lot more in terms of snaps. I do feel like with the Ravens, he can afford to sort of rest for a couple of plays, let Lamar Jackson do his thing, or throw to say Flowers or run it himself. So I think. Yeah, obviously we can't guarantee who would have done well at the Cowboys, but you can't be thinking that you'd have gone at least 9-8, maybe 10-6, if 10-7 even, if Henry was there.
Yeah, it's just like it's that crazy way you're just limiting yourself on what you can do, and especially when you've got as many. There's still bits that need work on for the Cowboys, like finding somebody who could help. Like I mentioned earlier, that could it be Solomon Thomas that helps Osha Odighizuwa? Somebody to go and help plug that middle. That costs money. These interior defensive linemen are starting to cost more money now because of the impact that they have on games and impact that they have on the running game and rush defense in particular. It's like, well, if you had a few more million free because you'd signed your players earlier and not had to pay them as much, you've got that money to spend there to do it. It's just crazy. I don't think there's any worry that Parsons leaves. I don't think he wants to go. It's almost like you don't really get rewarded for being a good soldier at Dallas. Like, you have to go through this media nonsense. I think what's key as well is all the players have spoken up for him. Every other player that's been in front of a microphone that's been asked the questions around what's going on with Parsons and the contract situation, etc. Everybody spoke up for him. I don't know if you saw in the sideline interviews that Parsons was doing, because he's kind of holding in at training camp. He had Trayvon Diggs stood next to him, kind of backing him up. CD Lamb spoke positively about him and backed him in the situation. Dak has as well. So I think that shows that kind of the team have got his back. And I think collectively the team were a bit sick of the games that the owners and the owner's son tend to play around these contract negotiations.
I mean, I'm sure we'll get some glimpse into that in the I don't know whether it's upcoming or has already been released, the upcoming Netflix Dallas Cowboys documentary. Has it been released yet, or is it coming up?
I think it's due out in August at some point. Yeah, and I think that's a lot more about kind of the glory days of kind of Jerry building the team in like the late 80s and early 90s. So yeah, I've no doubt Jerry's had final say and cut on that. So I don't think you'll be seeing anything negative about Jerry Jones in that Netflix documentary.
Well, let's head into our win-loss tie segment. So, for those who don't know the format, if you are watching or listening for the first time, each fan that comes on predicts their team's overall record by going through each game and answering with a win-loss tie answer. So, Paul, you and Byron were on last year for last year's edition of the season preview. In 2024, the Cowboys did go 7-10. By chance, do you remember what your prediction was, you and Byron, a year ago?
Was it 10-7?
11-6.
Oh, was it 11-6? Yeah. Okay, yeah, we were very optimistic. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was listening back to it prior to the episode and saw in my planning for this episode recording, and you were saying about how I think it was Byron who had a week 18 was saying it was Dallas against Philly for the division.
Oh.
So maybe not quite what you thought it'd be, but yeah, I mean, I think the only one that's been a more out there prediction has probably been our Browns fan, Dan Toomey, bless him. I've mentioned it a few times now. He had them winning 12 games last year and they won 3. So,
yeah, it is tough though. Like, I think for us, like 11, so saying 11-6 suppose that's off the back of what would have been, off the back of 3 12-win seasons. I guess kind of Dak was down for 9 or 10 games. Like that makes a big difference, I guess.
Well, week 1 is a road game, of course. This is the NFL season opener. You will be playing the reigning champions as they unveil their second Super Bowl banner. Must be a tough place for a Cowboys to be playing your first game against your rivals when they're unveiling their Super Bowl banner. But Paul, this one, win, lose, or tie.
It's tough for like unveiling the banner right in your face. I think is the thing. I'm kind of wearing a Philly green as well, inadvertently at the minute. But yeah, no. As much as I'd love to say the Cowboys go in and rain on the parade, sadly not. I think the Eagles will, beat the Cowboys in week 1. I'd just love to see the Cowboys be competitive in that game. I think as long if they can kind of hang with Philly, that would be good to see week 1. But yeah, I think you can chalk that one up as a loss. The teams, since they started doing this, the teams that win the Super Bowl play then their week 1 at home in that kickoff game. They've got such a good record. Like that home team wins, I think, like 75-80% of the time. So yeah, Eagles winning that one.
Well, week 2 is your home opener and is against the New York Giants.
Yeah, Giants at home, Giants at Dallas. I think I'll take the Cowboys to beat the Giants. The Cowboys have got kind of the run on the New York Giants at the minute. I think it's 14 out of the last 15 the Cowboys have beaten the Giants. So Cowboys kind of own the Giants, and that might, week 2, I'm still expecting that to be Russell Wilson for the Giants at that point. So if we can't beat Russell Wilson at home in Dallas, I'll be real worried. So yeah, first win of the season at home against the Giants.
Well, week 3, you're playing in Soldier Field against the Bears.
Yeah, tough one on the road. The Bears should be a lot better, right, with Ben Johnson. Although I did see a picture of Ben Johnson earlier today, and he looks like he's aged about 15 years already, and he's been in that job for 6 months or whatever it's been so far. So maybe head coaching's not taken to Ben Johnson nicely. But I'm going to go the Cowboys win on the road in Chicago. I am expecting the Bears to be a lot better, but I still just think they might be a little bit off yet from being a really good team. So I'll take the Cowboys to steal a win at Soldier Field.
Okay, well, sticking with the NFC North in week 4, you are at home to the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, it's a pretty tough start, really, isn't it? Like Eagles, Bears on the road, and then Packers at home. Cowboys very rarely ever beat the Packers. So yeah, I can't see this being any different. I think Jordan Love leading a really, really good young team, and last time the Packers came into AT&T Stadium, they wiped the floor with us in that playoff game. So yeah, I think that's 2-2 for the Cowboys there. The Cowboys fall to the Packers on Sunday Night Football. Great one to watch on the Monday morning. That.
Oh yeah, that's going to be that'll be post Dublin game as well. So it's going to be from Aaron Rodgers' current team to his former team, should be a good way to end the. Or was that Monday night? Did you say?
No, it's Sunday night. Yeah, so it's on the evening of.
People will be probably flying back at that point, probably not being able to watch the game, but you never know. Well, week 5, up against New York Jets on the road. Now, Justin Fields should be back at this point, might not be back, depends how his toe injury is. For this one, win, lose, or tie?
Yeah, sheer panic the other day, wasn't it, when Justin Fields had dislocated his toe? Like, just the Jets are cursed at quarterback. But yeah, I like the Cowboys going and winning in at MetLife. Again, like we did our AFC East preview recently, and kind of a lot of positive talk for the Jets, and they've got a lot of good young players. But yeah, again, I like the Cowboys to go into New York and beat the Jets. So it's that 3-2. So an okay start. Yeah, okay start.
Well, week 6 is another road game, but this time against the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, another Cowboys win back-to-back against the Panthers. Again, the Panthers I think are going to be much improved this year, but I think the Cowboys have got enough know-how there and enough experience to go and beat the Panthers in Carolina.
Well, week 7 is a team that we had on our last episode, the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, Commanders, big game in the division. If you talk about, trying to get to the playoffs, these are kind of the games you've got to kind of win home games against your divisional rivals. I'll take the Cowboys to beat the Commanders at home. I think Commanders beat us at home last year. late on in the season in a bit of a nothing game. But yeah, I like the Cowboys to win at home. I think that's a big key for the Cowboys, getting that home form back, being kind of a real difficult team to beat in Dallas. So yeah, give me 3 in a row, Andy. 3 in a row we'll have.
Love that. Well, week 8 is a game back on the road, but this time you are against the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, playoff team from last year. Dallas's recent record against playoff teams from the season before has been woeful. But give me 4 in a row. Let's get the hype train going for the Cowboys. We'll get it. Like I say, at this point in the season, getting up to halfway, are the Cowboys the real deal? Can they do it? We'll get all of that going because the schedule does start getting a little bit tougher later on. So, but yeah, I like the Cowboys winning again. So we at 6-2, 5-2,
6-2, yeah, 6-2. So good start.
Very good start. I think I probably have gone 1 win too far here, but we'll keep going.
Well, before your week 10 bye, you've got a week 9 home game against the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, Cardinals on Monday Night Football. Again, Cardinals are a relatively young, improving team. But again, Cowboys at home, prime time. You've got to find it again. You know, if you're going to be challenging for the playoffs, these are the games you've got to win. Give me another win against the Cardinals. I think 5 in a row might be too many wins that I've selected. But give me a win against the Cardinals.
Okay, so week 11, you are back from your bye week and you're on the road to the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, I see. Bye week and then going west isn't too bad. Again, Raiders, I think, they've got a lot to be excited about. But again, I just think too young, too inexperienced. I like the Cowboys to find a way to get it done. I think I'm going crazy. I think that's 6 in a row I've picked for the Cowboys. It will change, don't worry. But yeah, you got to get your wins in early on this schedule because there aren't too many to be found late on in the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say like 8-2. If you start 8-2, God, the hype around the Cowboys would be insane. I mean, look what the next 5-6 games are. They will be probably the calls also. They're pretenders. They're not as good as their record is. They've had an easier schedule.
Exactly.
But, I think certainly if you start 8-2 as your first time as a head coach, I think Schottenheimer would be very pleased with that start. And there's some good teams in this. So you've got the Commanders early on, the Broncos. On their day, the Commanders, so the Cardinals, the Packers, the Eagles in week 1. I mean, I know you lost to the Eagles in your prediction, but some good teams you've beaten in your predictions. I think if you were to start 8-2 and you have beaten the Commanders or you have beaten the Broncos, I think that's a good start for him. So I think you'd be very happy with that.
It would be, maybe in hindsight, maybe should flip the Commanders one, but still 8-2, 7-3. I kind of think this might be the way it goes for the Cowboys without necessarily having to be very good, because I do think they have the benefit of playing some poor teams, which I think is where you kind of see, you say 8 wins, but then you look at kind of who those 8 wins are that I've called out at, the Giants, the Bears, the Jets, the Panthers, Commanders are good. So the Broncos, Cardinals, Raiders, they're not all great teams, are they? So I think they've got the opportunity to kind of flat track bully some teams early in the season. And then this is where it's going to start to get a bit fun now.
Wow. Week 12 is against the reigning champions at home to the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, we're not splitting with Philly. We usually tend to go 1-1 with the Eagles, but the Eagles are just too good. Chalk that up the end of the winning streak. Eagles to come into Dallas and win. This is the start of maybe a bit of a bad run I'm thinking the Cowboys are going to have.
Yeah, it could easily be. And you're going from week 12 playing the NFC champions to week 13, want to get at home, but playing the AFC champions in the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, we Thanksgiving, short week. I guess the Chiefs will have it too, but yeah, short week, Chiefs. Obviously going to be probably one of the most watched games of the season, and the Chiefs will come in and hammer the Cowboys at AT&T Stadium. So that's another loss. So gone from 6 wins in a row to back-to-back losses.
And then you play the Detroit Lions on the road in week 14.
Add another loss to that one. That'll be 3 losses in a row. Lions are just too good, aren't they? Interesting for them, like with the Chiefs, they've lost both offensive and defensive coordinator about how they'll navigate the season, but they're just too strong. Especially kind of December, you're expecting the Lions will be, they are the favourites, but in the hunt to win the division, in the hunt for the number 1 seed. they'll put a beating on the Cowboys. To kick off December.
Well, week 15 is a home game, and you are against the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I've got flipped and flopped on this one. How good is JJ McCarthy going to be? But Kevin O'Connell's been so good with whoever's played quarterback for him at the Minnesota Vikings. Give me a win. Sod it, let's take a win. Give me a win against the Vikings.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned about O'Connell with quarterbacks. I literally had a article written or published today from the Touchdown where I talk about O'Connell's history of working with quarterbacks. So check that out on the Touchdown if you want to hear my thoughts on that. Obviously, by the time this podcast is released, it'll be out for a week and a half or so. But certainly give that a read if you'd like to read my NFL stuff. Week 16, your final game of the regular season at home. You take on the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, I like kind of what the Chargers have done. I think Jim Harbaugh's a really, really good coach. I think the Chargers will come into Dallas and win. Again, I think the Chargers are going to be in the hunt for one of those AFC wildcard spots. Playoff team last year. I expect them to be good again. So, yeah, I think the Chargers will come in and beat the Cowboys.
And then moving on to week 17, Christmas Day. Now, I will insert hopefully some special effects that all Christmassy in preparation for this game. It is 12 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern, which means I'll be on 6 o'clock in the evening, or maybe 5 o'clock in the evening for those watching in the UK. You travel to Washington and FedEx Field and take on the Commanders.
Yeah, I think the Commanders get the win back here on Christmas Day. Nothing like getting beat by the Chiefs on Thanksgiving, then beat by the Commanders on Christmas Day in front of the full watching NFL public. So yeah, I think the Commanders will split with the Commanders. So having won at home in week 7, we'll lose on the road in week 17.
Well, then finally, week 18, you will come up against the New York Giants at MetLife Stadium.
Yeah, this winning run against the Giants can't continue forever. The Giants are going to win a game against the Cowboys at some point, and I'll give it to them in week 18 here. Possibly, based on where we've pushed or where I've pushed some wins here, the Cowboys could be in the mix for a wild card spot here and maybe needing a win. I think the Giants might just extinguish the very faint playoff hopes that the Cowboys may have.
Well, yeah, you'd finish according to your predictions with a 9-8 record, which I said in the last episode, it is that fine line between that equator line of you could get in, but you could miss out. Are you expecting with 9-8 records to go to the playoffs? And if so, how far would you go in the postseason?
Yeah, no, I don't think 9-8 will be enough for the Cowboys to win. I think probably might end up losing a tiebreak, a couple of tiebreakers along the way there with some games that they've lost late in the potentially late in the season. I think obviously asking them to get to 8-2 by the time they play the Eagles in week 12 might be a bit of a stretch, but if they're going to be good in terms of if they're going to be challenging for the postseason, they have to stack up those wins early because the schedule from week 12 onwards is just brutal. We've just been through there. Eagles, Chiefs, Lions, Vikings were a 14-win team last season. The Chargers, 10, 11, 12 win team or whatever they were. Commanders, NFC Championship. They're all really good teams. That is 6 games in a row against teams with 11 or more wins from the previous season. No team has had to run that before in NFL history. No team has had to do that run of 6 consecutive games against 11 plus win teams from the season before. It is a horrendous run. And the Cowboys, I think, will be lucky to win 1 game during that stretch.
Yeah, that is absolutely brutal, that stretch. That it really is. But let's move on to our final segment, which will be our Fan Asks Fan section. So a brand new section to the off-season season predictions this season, where each fan who comes on asks a question to our next guest, whilst also beforehand answering a question from the previous guest. So our last guest was Commanders fan James Collier, and he wanted to ask you, Paul, if you had to go back to one Cowboys game in your time as a fan and change the outcome of the game, what would it be?
Oh, what a great question that
It's
is.
one of the best so far. That is literally, you've had a lot of questions so far. That is one of the best we've had.
Yeah, I would. Oh, there's probably a couple of standout ones. I think it's probably got to be the Des Carter game, the NFC divisional round playoff game against the Green Bay Packers. Want to say that's 2014 season. Feel like that's right. Yeah. So yeah, that has to be that season. So it's with Cowboys had the great year under Jason Garrett. DeMarco Murray had that kind of monster rushing year that led him to being, NFL's leading rusher. And Cowboys got away with a game against the Lions in the wild card round at home. Maybe got away with a couple of calls late on and beat, the Lions late. And the Cowboys looked like they were going to a win in Lambeau against the Packers, against the great Aaron Rodgers. And there was that controversial call on a 4th down whether Des Bryant caught the ball or not. For all the world, it looks like he catches it late on to give the Cowboys the lead. And sadly, it was ruled and overturned as an incomplete pass. And under any sort of law now, it's absolutely a catch. It's one of the crazy ones where they're just finding a way to rule it out. And if the Cowboys, would have won that game, could they have gone on? It'd been their first playoff NFC Championship appearance in 20 odd years at that point. And could they have gone on and won the Super Bowl? Maybe. Yeah. Green Bay won that game 26-21. It was ended up being the Super Bowl the Malcolm Butler Super Bowl. The Patriots beat the Seahawks. But could the Cowboys have gone into Seattle and beat them? They already had done during that season. Could have been. What could have been? That's a really good question, though.
Really good, and that when he mentioned it, that's one I kind of have 3 games in my mind. I thought you and Byron might say that was one of them. Des Bryant, and I couldn't remember who was against, but I had the Des Bryant in my head moment. The other ones I thought of, and I'm sorry to bring up these moments, but Paul, not the best memories for you, probably, but the one I thought of as well instantly was the Tony Romo botched field goal snap.
Of course.
Especially with Byron on the show, I thought he might have, he would have gone for that one. I think with his love for Romo, and then I thought about sticking with the Packers that game 2 years later with the when I think went to overtime against the Packers. It was Prescott and Zeke Elliott's rookie year.
2016 against the Packers.
Was it divisional rounds as well? Was it divisional rounds?
The Cowboys I think finished. Were the 2 seeds, so it was in the old 1 and 2 seed bye format. And Rodgers produced. I think he left 30 odd seconds left and got the Packers in positions kick. It was a long field goal as well. I think that Mason Crosby kicked 50 odd, but he had an insane sideline pass. I think it was to Mercedes Lewis, maybe. Just a ridiculous, magic Rodgers moment that got him in range for the field goal, and the Packers went on. The only other one was a regular season game. Do you remember the Broncos Cowboys one? It finished like 51-48 to the Broncos, and it was that Peyton Manning and the Broncos and Romo and the Cowboys just going up and down the field. Cowboys lost it 51-48 to a walk-off field goal after one Tony Romo interception. I feel like it'd been just a great result if they could have flipped it the other way and got the win. But that's probably my favorite ever kind of regular season game to watch because it was just insane how good Romo and how good Peyton Manning were.
Well, that's for the final part of the episode. Let's give you the chance to ask our next guest a question. Now, we like to keep what team is secret just for the benefit of the audience, and also just so we avoid anyone cancelling last minute and the question being completely obsolete. So, Paul, what is your question for our next guest?
I'd like your guest to answer, Andy. Who do they think is going to be the breakout star of the NFL for the 2025 season?
That is a great question, and you'll find out in our next team season preview. But this is where we end the show for today. So, Paul, once again, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, a pleasure, mate. Always great to be on with you.
Well, always good to have you on. And as I said before at the start of the show, if you ever want to check out Paul's stuff, head over to the Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover channel. Now, you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the Twitter handle on there, or X handle. You can find that on Twitter, Instagram, all sorts of platforms, as well as Spotify, podcasts, and all that jazz. But this has been the 2025 Across the Pod NFL podcast, Dallas Cowboys season preview. I have been, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, with our guest today, Paul Redman from the Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover podcast. And we'll see you guys for our next team season preview.